So when you think Kingdom Hearts, what's the first thing that you think of right off the bat? Well, for me personally, I think of Disney. If you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, chances are you are some form of percentage of a fan of Disney. In some form of manner. Rather it's more specifically towards the theme park, rather it's more towards the films they make, or the animation and stuff. Either way, you are a fan of Disney in some form of manner. And that has carried on through the entire Kingdom Hearts series. But one of the things that I've always wanted to do, and I never got around to it until now, was to actually sit down and actually talk about my top 10 favorite Disney animated films. And, well, with the most recent of them being that of the 60th animated feature film being of Chanto, that's a lot of films to think about. 60 of them, to be precise. Holy crap. Now, to be fair, I have not actually seen some of the more recent ones. The last one that I have watched was Moana. Everything else like Ralph's Breaks the Internet, Frozen 2, Raya the Last Dragon, I have not seen yet. But for the most part, I've seen practically every animated film that's ever been made by Disney. Now, when we say the phrase animated film from Disney, we go by the theoretical release rather than like the direct-to-DVD ones that people have notoriously hated over the years. For good reasons, of course. So what I want to do, I want to sit down and talk to you guys about my top 10 favorite Disney film. And that's hard to do, admittedly. But if I had to describe how I had to do this list, is that if I had to be forced down into a basement with nothing else except by the mouse himself, and he says, you have to sit down and at least sit through 10 films. These would be the 10 films that I'd be like, alright, no issues here. I mean, like, you know, if I was chained or something like that, it wouldn't be torture, it'd be like, okay, bring it on, you know? So these are the 10 films that I absolutely love. And I feel like, you know, kind of given a little bit of like, you know, from like childhood beginnings to growing up as an adult now. So that's kind of the interesting thing. It's kind of like these individual films have kind of built up over the years. So let's take a look at them, shall we? So the very first one that I want to talk about, number 10, is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, why is this one so high on the list of number 10? Well, for starters, as a kid, it didn't really resonate to me as much, but growing up, it kind of more or less kind of stuck with me through the ages. As a little kid, I would actually collect the Seven Dwarfs themselves. And that's only because of the fact my mother's favorite Disney film of all time is actually Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. But it's not just the fact that it's been stuck with me over the years. It's really because of the fact that, number one, it was the very first animated film that Disney has ever produced. And not only that, the animation of that is still unbelievably strong to this day. You know, you think about it, animation has come a long way, and the quality as well as how it's done throughout this entire film magnifies as years go on. You just look at it and you think to yourself, they didn't have anything. They did this frame by frame, drawing it, not computerized or anything like that. They drew this shit, and I'm like, whoa, this was hand-drawn? That's nuts. You know, the transformation sequence from the queen to the evil witch, to seeing the details on the trees and everything like that, just to think this was the very first animated film Disney produced and everything like that, just to see the magnifying of the animation itself, it still boggles the mind, you know? You go from like the Mickey Mouse cartoons and stuff like that, the way they've been drawn down and stuff, and then you go to Snow White and you're just like, wow. Number 9 goes to Pinocchio. Now, the interesting thing about Pinocchio, much like with Snow White, I really didn't have a huge fascination with Pinocchio itself. As a kid, I was more or less frightened of some of the some of the stuff. For example, the transformation sequence, again, back to that sequence, the transformation from boy to donkey, that was pretty freaky as a kid. But growing up, it kind of magnifies itself, you know. It's much like the same way with the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The animation in that is just still so strong in that. And I don't know what it is that made it so... I guess the word I'm trying to say is that what made it so fascinating for me to watch. What's even more fascinating is when you go back, watch through it and stuff like that, and start to realize there was some certain stuff that peaks up, and that's when you go, wait, what just, what? Did Jiminy just, did Jiminy just, oh my gosh! But I think that's probably the best part about this particular sequence of the animated feature films that was made early on. They wasn't restricted. They made the films to where they worked for all generations, you know. Kids could watch it, and adults could watch it and understand it better, you know what I mean? For kids, it would kind of go over, certain scenes would go over their heads, and then for adults, it would just kind of like, wow, my gosh, really? Whoa, okay. Especially whenever they go to, oh crap, I forgot the island's name. Prankster, I know it's not Prankster Paradise, but that's the only thing I think of. It's, Pleasure Island, that's what it is. Why did I think, Prankster Island? That's the world from, Dream Drop Distance. No, Pleasure Island is what it's technically called. Where they were allowed to destroy property and stuff like that. They were allowed to smoke and drink and stuff like that. Even for an adult, it's like, should I be allowing my kid to watch this? But at the same time, it sort of teaches the lessons of how to be, you know, a good boy rather than like a delinquent child. You know what I mean? And it's again, it's just because of the fact that the years growing up with it, you know, I didn't care much for it, but then growing up, it kind of magnifies itself. Number 8 goes to The Emperor's New Groove. Now, let me be the one to tell you this as to why it's number 8. For starters, The Emperor's New Groove is by far the best hilarious comedy film that Disney has ever produced. The best comedy film, okay? If you sat down and watched this, you know it's nonsensical from the very beginning to the very end. It's nonsensical. Every single thing that goes on in this film was built up the ideal of like, this is gonna get crazy, and it's funny as hell. Every single bit of it is a comedy gold mine of its own, you know? From Cusco being arrogant, to Yzma being psychotically insane, to Kronk being Kronk. Every bit of it is just comedic gold, really, when you think about it. But also, too, I think another thing that makes it so nice is the journey between Cusco and Pacha, the journey that the two of them take. I'm a big fan of, like, buddy journey films. I don't know why, but I do like these type of films where you got two random people, and they're on a journey. They may, on one end, hate each other at some point or another. They may not even care much for one another or anything like that. Hey, they may very well be distant enemies. But at the end of the day, they both realize that, hey, they both need each other in order to reach an end goal, and they work together to try to get to that goal. And to me, personally, this actually works really well for the story perspective. Number 7 goes to The Sword in the Stone. Basic story of Sword in the Stone is that you basically go through the beginning journey of Ward, also known as Arthur, as he basically, you know, kind of learns things and everything like that, thanks to the help of Merlin. Merlin is trying to teach Ward the lessons of life and stuff like that, as well as trying to get an education in, because Merlin knows what his destiny is, but of course Ward sees himself as just a normal kid. And of course this doesn't transpire until towards the end, but really it's the whimsical adventure that Merlin kind of brings out throughout the entire movie. You know, he's trying to teach Ward lessons and stuff, but the best way he's going to do it is try to do, obviously, like any sorcerer would do, use magic. And by using magic, he's not using it to cure all of his problems and stuff. He's using it to transform him into a fish, into a squirrel, into a bird. And the ultimate lesson is this: be careful what you do with magic, because even though it may seem harmless, all of a sudden you realize you've got a bigger problem to worry about. Again, it's a whimsical adventure, and I enjoy every moment of it. It's hilarious, it's funny, it's charming, and it's overall wonderful in my personal opinion. Number 6, Treasure Planet. So, much like with one other film known as Atlantis, Treasure Planet didn't get really received well with reviews and stuff. And I can understand some reasons as to why it didn't do well in the box office and stuff. But personally, Treasure Planet is probably the best imaginative ideal out there. Now, whenever I say imaginative ideal, it's one of those things where as a kid, you don't think much behind the science and stuff like that. You just think about, let's see, pirates in space. I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just an adventure on its own, really. The gratification of the adventure itself, followed by the different designs of each individual character. There's just something about it that I absolutely love, you know. Plus, I do like the combination of CG and animation. You know, CG doesn't overpower the animation, but the animation stands up strong while the CG in the background carries it along. It works very well. It's a very good balance, in my personal opinion. And it's one that I kind of wish we see more of, you know, this combination of hand-drawn animation with CG in the backgrounds and stuff like that. To me, personally, I like that realm of things, you know? And it kind of makes sense, because even Atlantis the Lost Empire kind of has that, you know, where it's like obvious CG, but it's like CG cleverly enough to blend in with the animation. And the animation stands up because of the CG that's in the backgrounds as well. And Treasure Planet, personally, is my personal favorite of these two. It's absolutely a strong candidate in my personal opinion. And I'm surprised that this particular one has not entered into the Kingdom Hearts franchise. It is so easy for them to do this. They just haven't done that yet. Okay, I think we all know why The Lion King is number 5. But allow me to explain. I have watched this film multitude of times. I have watched this probably more than I cared to admit. I've probably recited the film more than I care to even want to admit it, but why have I watched it so many times and yet it's only number 5? Really, there are other ones that I prefer more than The Lion King. But Lion King itself is still really good. It's still a really good film, even after all these years, you know? It's the reason why we have a live-action version of The Lion King, as insuperior as it is. We also have the Broadway musical of Lion King, which makes perfect sense. Lion King by itself is a charming and a wonderful experience. Not only that, but also an animation gold on its own, you know. Whenever you go look at the introduction phase of The Lion King, the animation of all the different animals, and whenever you look at the behind the scenes of The Lion King, you know, to see an actual lion, keep in mind, an actual lion in the studio, you have to pause for a moment and be like, was this really the best way to get the animation drawn for lions? But honestly, the film itself is really good, and the film touches and hits really hard, you know, especially the sequence of Mufasa's death still gets me every single freaking time, okay? It still hits me hard to this day. But also, too, it has a wonderful soundtrack, personally, as well, you know, from The Circle of Life to Hakuna Matata and everything like that. All of them work really well within this film. Okay, a lot of you are confused, I can gonna tell you. We're going from Lion King to Robin Hood. Why is Robin Hood number 4? Personally, this particular animation style, in this particular generation of animation, you know, they had to make some cuts in order to, you know, make the film, but make it to where it doesn't seem expensive and stuff. And while it does seem somewhat cheaply made in some weird sense, it works really well with the setup that we have here, being that of anthropomorphic creatures in the scene of Robin Hood. And in all honesty, it works really nicely. Yes, you can see certain animations, like for example, from Little John being compared to Baloo the bear from the Jungle Book. That makes perfect sense. But everything else works really well, actually, in all honesty. And not only that, but the songs are really good in this one as well. Each song is very catchy, and if for some reason you end up humming a little bit, it's quite charming to get stuck to your head. In the sense of the film itself, it's a really catchy film to sit down and watch it all the way through. There have been so many times that I've sat down and watched it, I just accidentally watch it all the way through by myself. And not only that, my whole family loves this film as well. It's one of those Disney films where we're just like, Robin Hood? Robin Hood. Robin Hood it is. Plus, Prince John... the phony King of England. Despite the fact that he might not be a strong candidate of a Disney villain, he's still a funny Disney villain in my personal opinion, rivaling to that of Captain Hook and Hades in terms of hilarious Disney villains. He is just as equal. It's just he's a different form of hilarity. He's the puny prince who wishes to superior his brother king. Number 3 is Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast by itself is a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece in a sense. And one thing's for certain that you cannot deny is that from the music to the animation to everything that is transpired itself, it's a wonderful story, it's a wonderful film, it's a wonderful musical. And the fact that this hasn't had a strong Broadway appearance compared to that of The Lion King kind of surprises me. But it does have one. It's just, again, not as strong as what The Lion King has done over the years, every single time you think to like Broadway musical, The Lion King seems to jump up more than The Beauty and the Beast. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why. But Beauty and the Beast, the animation is wonderful and flawless. The music are so catchy, and it tends to stick with you strongly. The story is magnificent. I absolutely love the story of Beauty and the Beast. In fact, I've talked about this in the past, and for those of you who have been subscribed to me early on, know this. But whenever the live-action film of Beauty and the Beast was coming up, I was very excited for it. I was very hyped up for that. Is it as good as the animated film? Obviously not. And I don't think its purpose was to. It was trying to be some kind of different iteration of it. It didn't do well as terms of difference, but it tried. But the animated version of Beauty and the Beast is superior to that, of course. And if you have seen this, you know why it is so good. Winnie the Pooh is a personal favorite of mine for many, many years. Many, many, many long years. I absolutely love the Winnie the Pooh, okay? And this one is my personal favorite of the bunch, Keep in mind, it was originally just released as a 3 separate film segment. And just by some sheer coincidence ideal, they decided to combine all 3 of them into a single movie package. And really, I absolutely love it. I love the animation that they've done it, the way they've done it, the way that they work well with the book and the sentence and stuff like that. I absolutely love it. It's, again, I hate to bring it up, but it's very whimsical and charming. But not only that, too, it magnifies more and more as I grow older. The very end product of it all, the way that it expresses itself whenever Christopher Robin gets ready to go to school and stuff, and expresses himself with Winnie the Pooh and stuff, it magnifies more and more, As a child, you don't think much of that. But as an adult, and you kind of reminisce back to your childhood, you feel that emotional feel of the distance between you and your childhood memories and stuff. And it's very strong within the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh, The journey that Pooh takes and his friends, the way that they're all get along so well, there's no hidden motives or whatever. They're all who they are, and by all accounts, it is a wonderful film. But you're probably asking yourself, if this is number 2, what's better than Winnie the Pooh? Well, you'd be surprised. Number 1 is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay, it's going to be hard to explain my reasoning for why this is better than Winnie the Pooh. Why is better than frickin' Beauty and the Beast? Why is better than The Lion King? Well, the best way to explain it is to explain the process of how The Hunchback of Notre Dame is technically. For every Disney film, it's always based on some form of book in some form of manner. In the past, it's always been this way. It's always been based on a storybook, a fable, a tale. Hunchback of Notre Dame is very dark. Very, very dark. It's hard to kind of write it any other way except for that. And it's still dark in this film. It's still that dark atmosphere, you know? The fact that Judge Frollo keeps trying to keep Quasimodo in the tower itself, trying to keep him there, trying to tell him the world is dark and evil and stuff, which in some form of way it technically is, but only if you look at it that way. And Quasimodo being stuck in the tower for however many years he has been stuck up there, he finally has a chance to look at the world the way it is. And while yes, there are a mix of opinions, there are good people in there. Plus, this is actually one of the films where the main hero doesn't always get the girl, you know? Esmeralda falls in love with Phoebus instead of Quasimodo. And Quasi sees everyone as a close friend towards the end. And it's one of those things where it's definitely a poetic form of Shakespearean, I suppose you could say, is the word I'm trying to think of. It's done very well, actually. The music, my gosh, I love the music in this one. It's definitely that opera-esque Shakespearean feel, the way they do it. Plus, all these different tracks, all these different songs magnify in a different way. From Out There, to Heaven's Like, Hell's Fire, to The Outcast. And all these songs work beautifully well. It's also quite humorous, you know. I know some people hate the comic relief of this one, but personally, I like the gargoyles. The gargoyle add a little mix of humor that works well. I do like it. I really do. Ultimately, it's about the presentation of how this film handles itself and how it's able to balance itself, you know. It's always on that edge of like, did we go too far, or we done it just about it before it went overboard, you know? I mean, where you're talking about religion behind things and stuff like that, it's never easy. And this film, in my personal vision, does it beautifully. It works really well, in my personal opinion. Well, anyway, that is my top 10 Disney films. This was not an easy list to do. There are so many other ones that I absolutely love, from like Lilo and Stitch to like Aladdin, Peter Pan, Jungle Book, and all that stuff. It's hard not to love the Disney films. And it's these Disney films that magnify itself within the Kingdom Hearts franchise. It's hard not to acknowledge the films because, again, for every Kingdom Hearts game, they always coincide with the Disney films that they feel will work well for that particular game. And so, that's why the Kingdom Hearts series is so loved, is because of how well it works from the Disney films. So, by not acknowledging the individual Disney films, you don't actually truly acknowledge how well the Kingdom Hearts series works in regards to the worlds and everything of that nature. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. This is BlackCross signing off. Catch you guys later.